Franny, Case Danny, Invisible Friend. For Kevin Lewis and Julie Kane Lipton. 17 days. Invisible Friend. Franny's house, chapter 1. The STEIN family lived in the pretty pink house with the lovely purple shutters down at the end of Daffodil Street. Everything about the house was bright and cheery. Everything that is except the upstairs bedroom with the tiny round window. The window looked in on a bedroom. Yes, but it was also a window into a lavatory, Franny's lavatory. And Franny's lavatory was spectacular. She had all of the things that you would expect animated scientists to have. She had an electron microscope. She had a nuclear-powered brain amplifier. She had a giant flesh-eating koala. And she also had a few special things that made Franny feel that her lab was just a little bit better than average. Franny doubted that any other mad scientist had a spider enlarger or this disease simulator. I'll bet no more than half of them have eyeball removing machine, she said, thinking how fortunate she was that she could pull her own eye out. But even if they didn't have eyeball removing machines or brain amplifier or spider enlargers, Franny suspected that her friends, if given the chance, would live nothing more than to set up labs of their own and devote themselves to the pursuit of mad science. It was for this very reason that her teacher next Samantha inspired Franny to help her classmates see the light. Chapter 2, Holiday. What do you like? Mrs. Sally stood in front of the class. We are going to talk about hobbies tomorrow. I'd like each of you to bring something that represents your hobby or interest. Surely not, Franny. Many of them don't even have hobbies or interests, and even if they do, they are probably the kind of dull hobbies that hardly ever explode or eat the neighbor's car. Franny raised her hand. Mrs. Sally, if somebody has a hobby that doesn't involve a massive amount of electricity or sewing wings onto things that want to burn with the wings, Will they still be allowed to participate? Mrs. Sally was accustomed to this sort of question from Franny. Yes, Franny, everybody will get to talk about their hobbies, Mrs. Sally said. Mrs. Sally was fair, but it seemed like a waste of time to Franny, who was absolutely certain that after a little exposure to math science, the kids would drop their other interests like hot potatoes, hot radioactive po- poisonous potatoes. Chapter 3. Back at the lab. Back at the lab, Franny thought about what her presentation would be. Fortunately, Franny had an assistant to help her with things like this. Igor was Franny's dog and lab assistant. He wasn't a poor lab. He was also Poodle, Pot, Chihuahua, Pot, Beagle, Pot, Spaniel, Pot, Shepherd, and Pot, some kind of a weaselly thing that wasn't even exactly a dog. Franny had told Igor about Mrs. Sally's assignment, and he was doing his best to make suggestions. He reminded her of the time she had brought a garden gnome to life, and they had to stay locked in the bathroom until the people came. Eager to the kids would like that. I don't want to take in a garden gnome, she said. He reminded her of the time she had increased the vacuum cleaner's power and had sucked her little brother inside out. Mom made me promise never to do that again, she said. He reminded her of the time she had engineered a cannibalistic hot dog that actually ate itself. That was pretty good, Franny said, but there's a kid in my class that always smells like hot dogs, and I don't want that thing going after him. Besides, it needs to be something that everybody can relate to. Franny walked over and looked at the dozens of devices she had recently invented. I like this. Eager, she picked up her toenail fungus translator. You know, deep down inside, all kids want to communicate with toenail fungus, but they've never been able to. Well, what is this device? They finally can. She put it in her book backpack. All the kids will live talking to fungus. I mean, come on, deep down inside, we're all made scientists, right? Chapter 4. Oh no, we're not. Mrs. Sally looked around the room. Everybody was ready to talk about it or her hobbies. She pointed at Erin. Erin, would you like to go first? Erin jumped to her feet and started to tape player. As the music began, she performed the classic foot stomping Irish dance. The students clapped. Franny raised her hand. So, Irene, about these shoes over here too. Have you ever considering splicing in a sample of Morton kangaroo DNA? It might make you bounce around in an even more uncontrolled manner. Irene looked at Franny for a moment. My dancing is just fine, thank you, she said, and took a seat. Next, Mrs. Sally invited Lawrence to the front of the class. He pulled an accordion from a big black case and played for a minute or two before Franny raised her hand. Now this is much better. I'm certain that you could operate the keys in different ways to increase or decrease the amount of pain we are experiencing around our ear regions. My question for you is this. Have you ever thought of making a larger version that you could attack the satellite and use to broadcast this effort over a larger area? Lawrence put the instrument back in the case. It's just an accordion, Franny. He said, I've been playing it since I was a little kid. Next was Phil. Mrs. Shelley held the logic open for him while he pointed out the various prize stamps in his collection. This stamp is from England, he said, and this one is from Japan. Franny raised her hand. I'm surprised you are considered altering these stamps so that they explode when people lick them. Have you? Phil shook his head. No, we're doing something like transforming the postal carrier into I don't know, a 9-foot tall scorpion man who pulls the exit from his stinger and can fly. For instance, Mrs. Shelley closed the book. Franny prefers regular, non-exploding, non-transforming postage stamps. Hold on, Franny said. Just hold on 1 second. She walked to the front of the class. Do you mean to tell me that none of us is the least bit interested in being a mad scientist? Chapter 5. Franny tosses her cookies. Eager said patiently and listened to Franny. Not one, she said, dropping the toenail fungus translator on the floor. In my whole class, not one other kid had ever thought about conducting an experiment. Dancing, yes, collecting, yes, athletics, yes, but math science, no. Franny continued her rant as she checked the progress of her various experiments. One kid had a terrarium with a chameleon, but get this, he doesn't do any experiences with it. Igor wasn't crazy about chameleons since the first time Franny's giant chameleon had tried to swallow him, but he shook his head and tried to appear as though he agreed with Franny. I asked Mrs. Sally if I could put off doing my presentation until tomorrow after Billy shared his hobby, which is making pretty cookies. My heart just wasn't in it. Pretty cookies. I mean, seriously, eager that has to be the dumbest hobby of all. Imagine doing all the measuring and the mixing and the waiting just for pretty cookies. Look, he even brought some in for everyone. Franny toasted her pretty cookies in the air and shot a sizzling the death right through them. These kids are so misguided. Eager, they don't know what they are missing. Their interests are absolutely unless maybe nobody has ever really showed them why math science is really the only hobby on earth. Franny stopped and grinned broadly. That's it, Eager. It's up to me to show them where they went wrong. I can't show them what they should be interested in, and I can see it's going to take more than a two-tail fungus translator. Chapter 6. You must be nuts and bolts. Franny consulted a book from her library called Mechanical Friends and Hazardous Robots for children. Ultimately, Franny created things the way she liked them, but a quick glance at some plans always got things rolling. She worked most of the night, and with Igor's help, she had a creation that she was certain would bring the kids around to her way of thinking. Chapter 7. Were you looking at my robot that way? Franny said, her desk grinning. She couldn't wait to give her presentation. Franny, Mrs. Shelley said, would you please come up here and show the class what you've brought in? Franny walked confidently to the front of the class. She knew that the kids would take one look at the robot and abandon their ridiculous hobbies. She removed the sheet that had been draped over her creation. The kids gossiped. It was a robot. I feel like it pulsed slowly on its chest, and they could hear a soft hum coming from inside. Its tiny square eyes seemed to blink. Why does it have two heads? One boy asked. Two heads are better than one, Franny said. When it's complete, those two heads will make it twice as smart as the next smartest robot, twice as useful, twice as complicated. Franny held up the robot's blueprint for the kids to see. My rapid computer brain revolted tension, hard drive, not so hard drive, elbow grease, coffee maker, tool on the floor, translation, them's the brake, them's the accelerator, house plan, power plan. Mr. Shelley said, Franny, did you say that it wasn't complete yet? That's right, Mrs. Shelley. It's not complete. I'm going to need other math scientists to help me. Other math scientists from the class, perhaps. Are there any volunteers? Billy raised his hand. Franny was smart. The first of many volunteers, she thought. Yes, she said. You'd like to help? I would. Billy said. After you finish farming, then I can teach you to bake pretty cookies. Chapter 8. In the gizzard of the lizard. Eager just hates to see Franny depressed. He did his best to cheer her up. He juggled the spiders. He dressed up like her mom. He even thought about letting the giant chameleon slow him a little bit, since that always made Franny laugh. All Franny could talk about was her friends at school. No volunteers are eager. They all want to stick with their pointless little hobbies. They don't get it. They don't get it at all. They don't understand it. The real of idea popping into your head out of nowhere, and when diving right in and making your idea just happen. If only they could experience that, Franny said. Just then, the giant chameleon appeared as far as if out of now out of nowhere, grabbed the eagle and swallowed him. Even though she was depressed, Franny laughed a little and shook the chameleon until eagle fell out of its mouth. It's hard not to laugh when a reptile is your best friend. You have to be more careful, Eager, Franny said. Eager hid behind Franny. You know, the giant chameleon can camouflage himself. It's practically like he's invisible. Franny's eyes narrowed and a familiar grin stretched across her big round face. Invisible, said Franny, and she nodded slowly. That's it, invisible. Chapter 9. Let me make myself clear. The next morning, Franny combined cellophane molecules with chameleon DNA and some disappearing ink. She ran the formula through an endoscope, which is like a microscope, but is designed to make things harder to see. She poured the formula into a very, very clean glass. She gulped down and ran to the mirror to see if it worked. She liked what she saw, or rather, she liked what she didn't see, which was herself. The formula had worked. She was invisible, and it was time for school. Chapter 10. Children should be harder and not seen. Invisible as go, the temptation are hard to resist, especially for one with a mind as inquisitive as Franny's. She had a quick peek in the school's cafeteria kitchen. She stepped in and had a look in the principal's office. She stopped in briefly to find out exactly what the teachers were doing in the teachers' lounge. She found all of her locations fascinating, but she had to get on to the next phrase in her plan to get the kids to devote themselves to math science in a way that Franny knew she should force them to want to. Franny strolled into her class completely unseen. She walked up to Erin, who was reading, and whispered in her ear, "I think I'd like to have a look at Franny's robot again." Erin set down her book and looked around confused. I guess I'd like to have a look at Franny's robot, she said, believing that she had done what Franny had whispered. She walked over to the mechanical creature and began looking it over. Next, Franny did the same thing to Lawrence and Phil, and they also believing the dots were their own, walked over and joined their in. Franny whispered to Phil, "It would be great if this robot had a huge crushing hand, don't you think?" And Phil repeated exactly what Franny had said. Franny moved the reins and Lawrence's head to make it look like they were nodding yes. All afternoon, Franny kept giving them one idea after another. She also checked and double-checked that the adjustments they were making were correct. Erin, Lawrence, and Phil got more and more excited as they worked on the robot, believing that they were the ones responsible. By the end of the day, Franny was exhausted but happy. She had made a lot of progress on the robot, and her friends thought that they had contributed. Back at home, Franny took the invisibility antidote and told Igor all about the experiment. It was a little bit funny. Igor, they really thought they were working on the robot. Of course, they are not qualified to do anything that complicated yet, she said. I'm not sure that Phil could even put batteries in a flashlight. But they had fun and it boosted their confidence, and maybe now they'll stop wasting time on those ridiculous diversion. Friday climbed into bed and drifted off to dream. How made science dream unaware that back at school something quite mad but quite unscientific was about to happen. Chapter 11, Sneaking Out, joined the circuit. Erin, Lawrence, and Phil crept quietly into the school. They were wearing outfits unlike any they had worn before. They were dressed like messiahs. They had tools and notes and devices that no real scientist would use to finish a particularly built robot. And yet that is exactly what they intended to do. They surrounded the rabbit and waited for one of those brilliant thoughts to pop into their head. But Franny wasn't there with her invisible whispers, so they just stood there looking at each other. After a while, Phil became impatient and decided to pretend to have a brilliant thought. It should be able to squat ketchup from its nozzle right here. He had. The other two nodded. It needed to be able to extend this like so. Aaron said, also faking an idea. And I have a few changes I think we should make to its brain, said Lawrence, who sometimes had trouble changing his pants, much less a rubber brain. We are totally made science now, Erin said as she pulled Craig carelessly at wire in the robot's chest. There's nothing to it, Lawrence said, reckless young joining sockets inside one of the robot's brains. And Franny hardly did any of the work on this robot as really more our robot than hers. Phil added and the robot beeped. Chapter 12. The new robot is a smash hit. Franny walked happily into her classroom. She was thinking about maybe rescuing more kids from stupid hobbies. She was surprised as anyone might be to find that most of her classroom had been smashed to smithereens. Not for anybody doing the conversion. There are 10 smitters in an ounce and 10 smithereens in a smitter. Erin climbed from underneath the smoldering chunk of desk. Thank goodness, she said. Another mad science to help us. Franny raised one eyebrow. Another mad scientist. What do you mean by another? You are not a mad scientist. Lawrence and Phil climbed out from their hiding places. Sure we are, Phil said. You should have seen us yesterday. That's right, Lawrence added. And we finished the robot last night. You finished it, Franny shouted. You are not qualified to do that. What made you think you could create and activate something that complex and dangerous? The three of them just looked down at their feet. Then it suddenly occurred to Franny. She was what made them think that. I have a very bad feeling about this, Franny said. Chapter 13. Forge plus tools. Busted minus obstacles. Franny scrubbled some computations on the robot's blueprint. She reviewed the notes that Erin, Lawrence, and Phil had given her and tried to include in her calculations what they could remember about the extra work they had done during the night. They could hear the robot starting on a new rampage somewhere else in the school. Franny finished her computations. Hey God, hey God, she gasped. Ah God, what is that? Lawrence squeaked. I designed the robot with two heads because, as you know, two heads would make it twice as smart as a regular robot. Phil tried to look like he understood. But you guys, well, you don't know the first thing about robots or electrics or science or mechanics or maybe anything. Erin solved a bit, but this was no time to argue. You see, because you know nothing, you actually made this robot twice as stupid as a regular robot. So will that make it easier to stop? Lawrence asked hopefully. Hand me my backpack, Franny said sternly. Chapter 14. Stupid and stupid. Stupider and stupider. Franny looked another digit for her invisibility formula. It can smash what it can't see, she said, trying her best to sound optimistic, and she faded from their sight. Most monsters find, even though they are often horribly destructive or have a plan. Either they want something, they hate something, or they are just trying to escape capture. So it's easy for a scientific mind figure them out and stop them. This thing is different, Franny thought. This robot is poor stupidness. It has two whole heads full of poor stupidness. Does things for no good reason. What would a poor stupid creature do in a school? Franny thought. Franny ran past the door on which the robot had left some graffiti. It was badly spelled badly drawn, and not all clever. In addition, Franny said it's probably inaccurate. If the principal really did has a rubber bat, surely, but now they would have flown her to consult with a medical expert in Switzerland. Franny ran past gigantic speedways that the rubber had left dangling from the ceiling and dripping down the walls. Speedway, she said. Can you imagine wasting perfectly good speed this way? Speed like most security secretions is hours of fun for a child with a microscope. Only an idiot would squander it this way. Speedy robot footprints led right up to the library door, and Franny actually felt an unfamiliar wave of fear wash over her. Not the books, she said. Chapter 15. Franny kept up to the rabbit. Franny slid quietly into the library. She knew the rabbit was in somewhere. She could have overlooked the graffiti. Franny had made inaccurate speculation about butts before. Butts are an imprecious science error occur, and she might even have been able to find some merit in giant speedway. She had to admit that they had a sort of a charm to them, like a fresh snowfall. A fresh snowfall that smelled like the inside of somebody's mouth. But Franny loved the books. She loved everything about them. Most of what Franny knew, she had learned from books. A creature this stupid could be in the library for only one reason: to destroy books. And an act that stupid was not going to be tolerated. She moved silently and cautiously, and then she heard it, the sad, sick sound of pages slowly being torn from the book. She crept through the aisles. She rounded the corner and saw the robot there, happily destroying books. It was clear to Franny that this mechanical imbecile would not stop until it had destroyed all of them. As she studied the horrible creation, she suddenly felt confident that defeating this robot was going to be quite easy. In fact, she felt very confident. Evidently, Erin, Lawrence, and Phil had installed an off switch right in the middle of the robot's chest. All Franny had to do was quietly walk up to the totally unseen and flip the switch. Actually, that was a pretty clever of them. Franny whispered to install an off switch in such a convenient location. And if Franny had done it for just a spare second longer, she would have realized that Erin, Phil, and Lawrence were not qualified to come up with something as clever as a chest-mounted off switch that would actually work. But she hadn't thought it through, and she did flip the switch, which was not weird to turn off the rubber, of course, but was weird to squirt a huge gush of ketchup from its newly installed ketchup nozzle. The books, book so Franny lifted through the air and drove in front of the shelf full of books, heroically perfecting them from the sloppy condiment onslaught, but at the same time taking the full impact of the ketchup herself, thus rendering herself totally visible to the robot. Chapter 16. Here, let me give you a hand. Crash! The robot smashed Franny with a giant hand. Erin, Lawrence, and Phil hold it and rushed into the library. "We'll save you, Franny!" they shouted. They folded their arms just like they had seen Franny do. "It's made science time," they said. The robot swung at Franny again. She tried to dodge, but it caught her hard smash. Ouch! Oh, got some mad science coming right up, the kids said, looking at each other helpless. The robot's hand came down with another might crash. Bash! Franny didn't think she could last much longer. Then Franny did what she did best. She thought, and she thought fast. Maybe a mad scientist is exactly what I don't need, she said. Smash! She took another powerful slam from the robot's hand. She looked over at her friends, and then it suddenly came to her. Franny knew exactly what they needed. What we need are philatelist. Philatelist. They yelled. What? Erin shouted back. A philatelist is a stamp collector, Phil said. Like me, Phil, Franny yelled. The eyes! Phil knew exactly what Franny meant. A part of a stamp would cover the rabbit's little square eyes perfectly. Phil pulled out a pair of stamps from his pocket and with a lick and a slap had them across the rabbit's eyes. Slap, slap, smash. Now blind, the robot missed Franny entirely, and its metal hands were too big and clumsy to remove the stamps. Now, what needed an accordionist? Franny shouted, and Lawrence leaped into action, grabbing one of the rabbit's heads in his right hand and the other head in his left. Lawrence began flexing his powerful deltoid and trapezius muscles built up by years of music lessons. The robot reeled and fell under Lawrence's mighty accordionist blow. Clank, clank, clank. Now, what in it is, Franny began, but Erin was already one step ahead of her. An Irish dancer, Erin said, and began hammering out a merciless hail of rhythmic stumps on the fallen rabbit, sending gears and wires in all directions. When the dust finally settled, the four of them stood there looking at the pile of broken, flattened rubber parts. It was over. They hadn't won. They had been saved by philately accordionism and Gaelic choreography. Chapter 17. Now you are cooking. Later back at the lab, Franny and Igor were completing Franny's newest project. She had explained what had happened that day, and Igor wondered if Franny knew just how extremely lucky she was to have a friend that were not mad scientists. Franny put down her wielding torch. At last it's complete, she said. Eager, Franny said, handing him a piece of paper. Run downstairs and get these items quickly. I'll need them for the next experiment. Igor began to read the list as they rang sugar, flour, milk. Franny picked up the phone and paused to look at her newest creation. She dialed the phone. Billy, she said. Eagle walked in with the ingredients, bowls, and cookie sheets Franny had requested. How would you like to come up to the lab and share some of your techniques with me? Eager heard Franny said. Rain Dance had stamped the rubber into nice flat pieces that Franny had spent a long time cutting and welding into what was probably the best pastry over in the world. Franny K. Stein made the scientist was going to bake pretty cookies. He'll be right over. Franny beamed and Eager smiled. Jim Benton is a writer and cartoonist whose unique brand of humor has been seen on toys, television, T-shirts, greeting cards, and even underwear. Franny Castaigne is the first character he's created especially for young children. 100 and the father of two. He lived in Michigan, where he worked in a studio that really and truly does have creepy stuff in it. Visit him at the Franny STEIN Company.